Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973.
8 minutes before 8 is the time. Just reminding you, the Prime Minister joining us in the next hour, as he will be talking about this new drive to boost food production and to back British farmers. And here to give us details ahead of Boris Johnson's appearance is the relevant Minister. Victoria Prentis is Minister at the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, and obviously is a Conservative MP and joins me now. What can you tell us? Obviously, I know you won't want to steal the thunder of the Prime Minister, but what can you tell us what we're going to hear later today? Good morning, Minister.
Good morning. Well, it's an exciting announcement today. I think one of the standouts for me is, for the first time, we want to put a goal for food security, so for what we produce in this country, into government policy. That's the figure's gone up and down over the years. It's currently at about 74% of what we can grow here, we do grow here. And we think that's about right. And I know that the NFU shares that ambition. So it's my job to make sure that we have the right farming support in place to enable our farmers to grow the food we want to eat.
OK. It's attracting a degree of criticism, not least from the government's own czar or lead advisor, Henry Dimbleby, who says it's not a strategy. He also says that why was a sugar and salt tax to fund healthy food options? Why was that ignored, Minister?
Well, I've spoken to Henry extensively, Henry Dimbleby, and we're very grateful for the work that he did. He actually is very pleased with the strategy, and I've just heard him on other news channels explaining that. Over half of what he recommended
it's not a strategy, he says, Minister. He tells The Guardian it doesn't set out a clear vision as to why we have the problems we have now. It doesn't set out what needs to be done. So unless he's had a complete change of heart, that's what he said yesterday to The Guardian. I wonder if we can address that.
Well, I think it might be worth you listening to him on other news channels. I think what Henry says, and has said to me directly, is that he's very pleased with the environmental direction of travel, which of course is the bit that we're concentrating on today. We're concentrating on how we support farmers to grow the food we need, but that he feels that further work needs to be done, as does the government. We share his view on this, on the health side. But I know that the Department of Health will shortly be coming up with proposals, they've said they will, to deal with some of his recommendations.
But why was
so I think
the
answer to Henry...
Why was the idea of a sugar and salt tax dropped, though, Minister?
Well, we think that the idea of a sugar and salt tax is quite a blunt instrument for dealing with what is a very complex problem. We all want, well, I'm afraid I need to eat less salt and sugar in my diet, and I suspect that others listening will feel the same.
I know that I'm with you there, Minister. We're on the same page.
So there are different ways of tackling this problem. We know that there was real success with a levy on soft drinks, but we know that voluntary initiatives can work too. So we've been working really closely with the food industry to try to get them to reduce the amount of sugar, for example, in breakfast cereals and yogurts. And that collaborative work has led to a 13% reduction in sugar. We're doing other things like putting calorie counts on menus, which you might have noticed, Nick.
Yes,
that's come in recently. And we've got, the pesta power problem, the sweet goods by checkout difficulty. We're bringing a ban in on that from October this year. So we think that this is a difficult problem. You know, and I know that we all want to eat things that aren't good for us.
Yes.
But we need to deal with this not by means of a sledgehammer, a blunt instrument of a tax, but with a whole suite of measures. One of the really exciting things in this strategy today.
Are you sure you want to use that language? There you go, on your whole suite of measures. But do go on, Minister. Yes.
Yes, I think I
Perhaps
spell
raft.
it differently.
Let's say raft.
Let's say raft until we think of a foodstuff that involves rafts.
Yeah.
But I think, seriously, for a minute, one of the most exciting things in this strategy is not going to look attractive or exciting to the general public, but it is to do with data collection. So we're setting up a whole system for working with the food industry to collect data, to persuade them to record the right data, and only then can government come up with the right policies to help them reduce sugar and salt across the board. But there are some really good concrete measures in this strategy to help us to do that. And I'm pleased that the Food and Drink Federation, while initially very about government plans to reduce sugar and salt are willing to work with us, and their members are willing to lean into this.
All right, Mr. Dimbleby also pointing out the plan includes no ambition to reduce meat consumption, which the food presenter Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall says is lazy, spineless and pandering to the food industry's status quo. A word on that. Why, again, no word trying to cut down consumption of meat, Minister?
I think it's really difficult for government to interfere in these very personal choices that people make about what to put on their plates. There are very environmentally friendly methods of food production. Of course we need a food policy. We need to make sure that we're giving the right nudges, the right steers, collecting the right data, making the right policies to ensure that people can eat a more healthy and sustainable diet and have the right, really correct scientific facts on which to make those choices. But it's not for me to tell you what to eat for your lunch.
OK. Can we talk about a couple of other matters? There have been staff shortages in the great British farming industry. And, of course, we know that it's dependent times on transient labour, people coming in from other countries. Are you confident that whenever the harvest comes around, when we need to gather the hops, the apples, dig the potatoes, are we going to have the necessary workforce, Minister?
It's always difficult. I was brought up on a plum farm, and getting seasonal worker for that moment when the plums are ripe was always our biggest problem. We are one of the very few industries with a carve-out to immigration policy. We have a seasonal worker route that's set out in more detail in our strategy today. And we have 40,000 visas, which we are able to give to people who are willing to come here to help us pick our seasonal fruit and veg and help with our poultry for Christmas, for example. I think that's the right policy, and that dovetails very well with the domestic workforce that we have. There's lots in this strategy today about skills and tech and making the food industry a really good place for young people to want to come and work. And that's also part of the solution, as is automation.
All right, and lastly, the Northern Ireland Protocol. We're going to hear more about that today from some of your colleagues. Can British sausages currently be successfully exported to Northern Ireland, Minister? And if not, what's going to be done about it?
It's really difficult. We have a series of we've put in place a series of easements which enable us to do those exports at the moment. However, there are difficulties, well, not with sausages, with other products which we might want to export, seed potatoes, for example, oak trees for the Queen's Jubilee, that we are currently unable to send to Northern Ireland in the way that we'd want to from GB. So it's clear to me that while some aspects of the protocol are working, and with those easements we've put in place, things can travel, there are real difficulties.
And what do we need to hear then later to ease it? And why on earth can't we send oak trees to Northern Ireland for the Queen's Jubilee?
Oh, it's so frustrating. Some of the ways in which the rules have been interpreted and the inflexibility shown by our partners in the EU have been extremely frustrating. What is important is both that we put this legislation in place in case we're not able to come to an agreement, but also that we put a lot of welly into coming to sensible arrangements with the EU. I'm sure we can, in order to make sure that goods can flow freely, not just north-south, but also east-west. It's really important that we do that.
Grateful for your time. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the show. Victoria Prentis, Minister of State for Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, appearing here on LBC, where at 1 minute after 8 the news is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global